All right, on an undergraduate episode of Why Wait Till Sunday, I'm here with Nate Marchese, that's at CFF Nate from Twitter. And he is a perfect guest for our pod because he specializes in college fantasy of all kinds, redraft, even dynasty, and DFS. So after the intro, we are going to get into all things CFB fantasy in one moment. Hello and welcome to Why Wait Till Sunday. I'm your host, Alfred, and I am here with a very special guest tonight.
This guy's got it all, everything you could ask for.
Longhorn fans are excited about Bijan Robinson, number 5. This is a guy that comes in as the number 1 running back recruit in the country.
Elite, elite, elite.
Back to the ground with Robinson, who spins and then tries to bounce it. A stiff arm, another one as he rides it, keeps his balance. They're going to say step down.
He's got tremendous upside.
By Stevenson, a little bit of pressure as he launches it downfield. Touchdown, Sooners, the breakout freshman, Marvin Mims.
This is so confused on defense. Lane Kiffin was trying to get a timeout. Instead, it's a first down, and it's a touchdown for Utah.
He's my play of the week. Smash potential here. That's what I'm saying.
The royalty of college football is in assembly at the Rose Bowl 2006.
So we are very excited to have Nate here, and welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
Hey, it's going great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, super excited specifically for this episode. A lot of my off-season kind of content, some of the interviews have been, honestly, talking to people who don't do, kind of what we do in terms of kind of getting into the college fantasy side of fantasy football. Whether it be C2C focused or DFS or any of that, and kind of convincing them or talking to them about like how could you get into it? But I don't have to do that with you because you're already real deep into it. So, why college football? How did that come about for you? I mean, it's something that you don't find every day. Someone who's into the college football fantasy so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, if you're trying to talk somebody into it, send them my way. I would love to. I'd love to have a shot at their ear for a little bit. But yeah, I've been doing it for about 14 years or so. I want to say it was around 07 or 08. Me, some college buddies, roommates back in Oklahoma just said, well, I mean, we've got it for MLB. We've got it for NFL. Why can't we do this for, the college side of things? And so one night I put together a spreadsheet on Excel and we got after it. And it was pretty brutal every Sunday morning, hungover, trying to figure out who won that week. But eventually CBS came along, and then Fantrax came out with a pretty decent platform for us to be able to do it and make everybody's life easier. So and ever since then I've just been really involved in it and expanded to doing some more dynasty, and then recently best ball DFS has kind of been something I've spent a lot of time on. About I don't know, it was a handful of years ago, back when there really weren't a lot of CFF website options. I was a weekly guest on a podcast back then, and actually that was the very infancy stages of DFS, and we talked about it a little bit, but mostly redraft type stuff we discussed. And then since then, I've just been active in Twitter, trying to grow the CFF landscape and trying to just grow college fantasy football, because it's it's what I'm passionate about and like spending time talking about it.
Yeah, well, that's an amazing story. So you actually, you hear the stories about even fantasy baseball starting, and I don't know where it was, that restaurant in like the 70s or 60s, I don't know, where they actually, hand tallied stuff. So it sounds like that's what you were doing. That's incredible. I mean, you're dedicated. You're an OG college fantasy football guy, man.
It certainly made my life so much easier whenever a few platforms were established and we could do that. But it was a lot of fun. We back then there was there was nothing. There wasn't information out there, so everything we came up with or what we decided on, who we drafted, who we picked up off waivers, there was no groupthink. There was no anything. We were just kind of running with it.
Yeah, I mean, no consensus. Even right now, I mean, that's why a quick plug for our website, campustocanton.com. But that's why we decided to put our website together because, frankly, there isn't anything that focuses on college production in terms of week to week fantasy, at least not very well. And even in terms of thinking about these players and how they may project to the NFL, there's some websites, I've seen them and they they update in August and don't update again for the rest of the year. And so you're looking at guys who don't even, who maybe were a good prospect recruit, but haven't done anything in 2 years and they're still on people's lists. Like no one's updating it or giving it the proper attention. So I still think that landscape has tons of room to grow. But guys like you and there's that one account that does all the flurry of injury stuff leading up to the noon kickoff.
Yeah.
CFF Fantasy or something like that.
I can't imagine how busy that guy is.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's a lifesaver. It's like I have to have that account. Like he's got people glued to it from 11 to 12 every single day or every single Saturday. Yeah. Well, that's very good. So I want to, you do all realms, like you said, redraft, and they have even dynasty where you can keep guys, I guess, year over year. Mm-hmm. And then when they go to the NFL, they're just gone.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So I haven't personally delved into that. And then there's best ball. Is that new this year or is that around last year?
No, we've been playing best ball for a few years.
Oh wow, that's really cool. Some of this stuff, the college specific side, I actually am learning about right now. And then of course DFS, which I got into. I've been playing DFS for years and years, but specifically jumped into college 2 years ago, and then last year took it a little more seriously in terms of, week to week, really trying to, quote, grind the slates. So do you do anything in the off season to think forward? Or is it like, might as well just wait till the slate comes out? Do you rethink your strategy or anything like that? What do you have an off season process at all?
In regards to DFS, most of what I'm doing is week to week, is trying to understand, okay, what's the rumor mill on guys that might be potentially sitting out or injured, understanding what the weather, is going to be like, and if it's going to play a factor in a key game that's got potential to be high scoring, those types of things. Some of the things that I've been looking at this offseason, though, I have been kind of looking at maybe revamping my strategy and just kind of how I go about more tournament play when it as it pertains to DFS. I am somebody that tends to grind quite a bit. I tend to make most of my bankroll each year that I've been doing it with some of the lower profitability games, the 50-50, the heads, the double ups and stuff like that. And so kind of rethinking how I'm looking at a, the tournament play, understanding that, it's not a computer essentially that I'm playing against. I'm playing against people and really trying to evolve the way that I'm thinking into, okay, does the lineup that I'm putting together, what is its ceiling, if these guys hit? And then, okay, is everyone else going to hit with this exact same lineup or something really, really similar to it too? So trying to find that balance of guys that I like, that I project to do really well that week, but also understanding, okay, what's the ownership percentage and how is that going to play into this particular thing? Because the margins are just so razor thin when it comes to the tournament play. The difference between 9th and 109th could be 5 or 6 points. It could be one guy fumbling, or Cameron Harris getting stuffed at the 1 and De'Aaron King's the one that gets to take it in, right. Something like that. That's literally the difference. So luck plays a huge role into it, but still just trying to understand what's really that balance between guys I like and, what the ownership percentage is going to be on some of those guys.
So that's a great point about ownership percentage. There's so much content for NFL you can find projections for ownership. So what do you do on the college side? I mean, are there people kind of trying to put that out there, or do you have your own system and you're guessing based on over-unders and popular games and nationally televised games?
Right, as it is with most college as compared to NFL, there aren't nearly as many resources out there. There's people out there like Mike Bainbridge and a handful of others that are essentially saying, okay, here's what I think are good values. Here's guys that I think could pop this week. These are guys that are poorly priced by DraftKings or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of, observing some of that stuff. And honestly, I look at a lot of that as where I'm going to kind of zag, where others are kind of soaking in some of that information and going down that direction. So, but yeah, not nearly the depth of info that you would have on the NFL side.
Right. Well, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of times I'll read, even on the NFL side or whatever, I'll read waiver wire articles just to see what the masses are taking. And even though I have my own guys I prefer, and it's the same thing. It's like, it's good to read and listen to any content because then you know who else everyone else is talking about. And if you don't hear anyone talking about a guy, you can maybe assume he's going to be lower rostership. So, that makes perfect sense. And unfortunately, that's probably the best way we can do it because, like you said, I don't want to complain about there's no content because part of the reason I want to do more CFB college or CFB DFS is because there's no content. So I think there's an edge if you do your homework. There's an edge if you're, good at it versus, when Joe Schmo can just go pull up, 16 podcasts and 54 articles that say the same thing, who's good, play this week. So I think there's an edge because there's no content,
I would say, yeah, I totally agree with you in that. But I do think that I'm starting to see a change there because of, guys like, you and Colin and Austin and Felix, everybody over there at Campus Canton, having your platforms now, guys at the WWTS have been doing it for a few years, and Bainbridge and the CFF site, there are some options out there, and people, I can just tell over the last couple of years, the chatter on Twitter has really picked up, and people are engaging more on the college side, and not just from a Debbie perspective. Oh, hey, I'm going to take a look at the film on this guy so that in 5 years I can add him to my roster, So I do think that it has picked up some, and I've seen a little bit of that growth. But yeah, I'm with you. I still think that there is an edge for those that do a lot of research in the off season and really, kind of highlight some guys that they're hearing or having really good camps, or that the coaches are trying to talk up a little bit. And that kind of gives you an edge, especially I find the first probably 3 to 4 weeks of DFS to be really where I tend to make the most amount of money throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, my buddy who does a lot of the NFL says, the early part of the season is actually where you want to jump in because, he's like halfway through the season, all the fish have lost their money and they don't want to play anymore. And so then, the later in the season, you kind of get more diehards. So, and this year could be interesting, like you're saying, with everybody. There's a general churning and a buzz that, maybe some more people that never played it before jump in this year the first couple weeks. And so maybe you'll have some noobs trying to try it out. And so this year could be interesting. And the next following years, those first 4 weeks of the season could be very nice for some of us that have a little more experience. Which leads us into experience. So one interesting thing about the college default lineup, at least on DraftKings, and I believe FanDuel is the same, is Superflex. And that's something that on the NFL side, they do not have for your standard lineups. Yes, the showdown slates, you can pick 2 quarterbacks, but for the standard slates, you do not have 2 QB options. So there's a lot there, I think, just with that opening up, right? You can double stack a game. You can go both quarterbacks and multiple receivers from the same game. You could fade 2 quarterbacks and say, there's not 2 I like. I did that a couple times last year, saying there's just not 2 QBs I like, and you'll be different if you only have 1 QB and do a running back or something in the Superflex. So how do you deal with that?
I would say for the most part, where I do like a super flex double stack, where I've got I got both QBs, and then I've got receivers of both QBs stacked together. There is something I usually consider more in a tournament style setup, where if I miss on a couple, and I'm not going to cash, screw it. I don't really care. But if I hit on both of them, especially if one of them does happen to be not a chalk pick, then I think it can be effective. I worry about it less in some of the lower profitability type games.
Okay.
I'm really not as concerned in that situation. I'm just concerned more. Okay, I just need to find a way to accumulate points to put me in the top half.
Sure.
Versus I don't need to just strike and hit on every one of these particular picks. But yeah, I do think it can be effective. I think that, for instance, this year, if you're looking at like a particular chalk setup with a couple guys like say Bryce Young and Mechie, and then you pair those with, Georgia State's Quad Brown and Sam Pinckney or something like that, is just an example. I think that there's opportunity there for sure.
Yeah, and it's certainly an interesting wrinkle that I really like. I mean, that's one of my most fun things is the fact that I think the NFL side would be good. I think to do Superflex, but yeah, it's a really fun special component to the college side. And last year, I believe I was so close to like smashing a tournament, but I missed the double stack. It was UNC Wake Forest when that game just went absolutely bonkers. And Powell was high owned, but Hartman wasn't, and he had like 5 touchdowns or something outrageous.
Yeah.
And that double stack won the tournament. So. Very interesting things, but then you can be very different. Again, I play a lot of tournaments. I don't do a ton of 50-50s in the college game because I feel like the scoring is so wild that I could learn from you. I mean, I feel like it's hard to feel comfortable with a lineup that's going to be 50-50 because the scores are just so high. Like you can just, fade a game and not even realize it that goes 50-49 because college is just insane. Whereas in the NFL, you can kind of be a little more calculated and say, I think this is a safe cash lineup. So I'd like to hear more about that. You say you play a lot more 50-50s and talk me off the ledge thinking it's so dangerous.
Yeah. So for me, I just feel like with something like a 50-50, if I can against a just standard DFS player that probably hasn't done as much research as I have, I feel like I have a better shot at finishing in the top half, given that scenario. So I feel like it almost takes a little bit of the luck out of it for me. Whereas in tournament play, I don't feel as confident in the fact that it always feel like I said, it's just razor thin margins, and it always feels like if I'm 1 or 2 players away, I'm forever away from actually winning or being in the top 3 of the tournament or something like that. Whereas I know if I'm 1 or 2 players away, if I'm doing one of those, 50-50s or double ups, I'm still right there. And I feel like just my overall knowledge gives me a little bit of an advantage in some of those other games where I can kind of grind away and build a little bit of a bankroll that then usually goes towards my tournaments, which I have been less successful with.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a lotto ticket for sure.
Right.
The tournament does a little more luck than otherwise. And so, do you have, this is a little off script, but I'm just curious, do you have like a model or some kind of projection system, or is this all kind of done by hand? Because you can't, like, again, they're in the NFL, you can buy models from Fantasy Labs and other places like that give you the optimizer, but I don't know if people, unless it's homemade, I don't feel like people have a CFP optimizer.
No, I don't have a model or anything like that. That sounds like something that Andrew Katz would have. He's a big DFS guy on Twitter,
Yeah.
but he absolutely is not going to share it with you if he does have one. But
Right.
no, I don't have a model. It's literally just like I said, just kind of breaking down the particular guys that I like, and then really just kind of weighing and saying, okay, am I going to be able to get a balance here? And with this lineup, is it going to have a chance to, have good profitability based off of what I think the ownership percentage is going to be on some of these guys?
Yeah, no, I think that's another reason why I kind of like college, because, unless someone hand builds something, there's, it feels like a little more of a level playing field with the competition, rather than, I mean, some of these NFL guys who, just pour all week into like mathematical, perfect lineups. And it's just harder to compete with that when I'm trying to just like do this as a fun thing on the weekend and I'm not making a living off of it, but, um, well, uh, so you touched on this a little bit. Like, the college football game seems to be growing, and I think there's a number of factors that go into why that might be the case. The growth of dynasty and Devi in some areas. I think just the college game becoming more national. I think this stuff with name, image, likeness is going to make it more marketable and probably make it a more national game instead of just very regional, kind of as it is right now. What do you think is going on with the CFB market in terms of popularity, fantasy? Where do you see it going? It sounds like you're optimistic it'll get bigger.
Yeah, I am. I would love for it to grow even faster than it has been. Just with the amount of time that I've put into to talking with people on Twitter about it. I think last year was a poor representation of college fantasy football, just given all the uncertainty with COVID, the fact that there is a total lack of transparency with injury reports, and coaches are unbelievably difficult to get information out of. And then Fantrax had a little bit of a scoring issue halfway through last year's season. So I think that was kind of a bad representation of what CFF is. But I think overall it is growing. And like I said, I think the biggest growth area is the fact that people that were doing just Sunday, or we're diving into some Devi, have now really gotten into certain things like campus to can. I think that if you love college football and if you love NFL, it is the perfect campus to can is the perfect dream scenario as far as blending those two. I'm like I said, I'm a big proponent of best ball. I do think that it's a gateway type of format, and you can get these guys that don't want to do all that. They want to play college fantasy football, but they don't want to grind through the week to week research of trying to find out which guys might be suspended, which guys might have an ankle injury that Mike Gundy's not going to talk about ever.
Right.
And it allows you just to kind of draft it and quit it and then be done with that season. If you like it, then you can dive a little bit deeper the following season. I've been a big proponent. It's been I tweeted out a while back about what I think makes a successful college fantasy football league, and how you can have a lot, less attrition, more participation from owners. Is one thing that I think is actually doing a best ball lineup setup. So you draft like normal. You do your transactions, your waiver wire transactions, your trades like normal, except for you don't have to set lineups on a weekly basis. And so it takes out the guessing game of who's injured, who's not. And you don't have to worry. Nothing's more frustrating than getting that zero spot late in the day because the Washington State quarterback isn't going to play that day, and nobody knew about it until 10:30 at night. So, yeah. So I'm a big proponent of that. But yeah, I think overall there's growth, and I think it's going to continue to grow the more people get into Devi and Campus Can.
The Best Ball CFF, is that hosted, I would assume, by Fantrax?
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
I'm gonna have to get in on some of those. Maybe if you do a league, I'd love to jump in. I have not done a best ball college side. I'd love to try that out this year. All right, so we got some quick hitters now. Just on the college side, I want some of your predictions, your feel for some of the actual teams and players that we're going to be dealing with this year. So who's your favorite undervalued offense heading into 2021?
I like Western Michigan this year. And you can really never go wrong with Maction.
Right.
I think they've got a lot of really, really nice pieces. LB showed he's a good quarterback. 18 touchdowns, 2 picks, a handful of rushing touchdowns last year. I think Sky Moore is going to really slide in that Dwayne Eskridge role.
I hope so.
Jalen Hall's one of the better deep threats. Jefferson proved he's a workhorse. I just think they've got a lot of pieces to put up a bunch of points this year.
Yeah, Maction's always a good time.
I was going to say, I'm also really interested to see, especially from a DFS standpoint, how they price out early on Western Kentucky with all the changes they had. The new air raid system, the guys coming in with the OC that they're super familiar with. I'm curious kind of how that's going to play out the first few weeks. They're one of the more intriguing offenses early on.
Oh man, I will be all over Western Kentucky stack. But I mean, it probably won't be on the main slate. I guess if they play on a weeknight game,
Right.
maybe they will be. But I would love to go Zappy and some of his
Spins.
receivers, Joshua Simon. Oh gosh, yeah, that I've been a big like, and we do a lot of obviously C2C, but like I'm still fine with Zappy late in the C2C. I think there's a chance he goes to has a big season, goes to the Senior Bowl, and then gets drafted. I mean, I think he's legit. I did a full on hour-long film review earlier this offseason, and I think he's got a real live arm. I mean, I think he's not just some guy who was only doing the 5 wide, air raid, although, that is what they did. But I think he's got some real talent in that arm. What about a P5 underrated offense?
I like UCLA this year. I like what Chip Kelly's done. They've gone from like 95th his first year in points scored, 80th the second year, and the last year they bumped all the way up to 20th. They're bringing back DTR, Britton Brown, Charbonnet in the backfield, Phillips. I mean, they've got Dulcich, hell of a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
I just think they got a lot of really nice pieces, and I mean, Chip Kelly's got a system, man. He's got it down, and they look to be rolling.
Yeah, I like that call a whole lot because UCLA, and they've been so trashy for a while. And I think they could surprise some people. I really do. I am a bit of a sucker for, I know this is, I mean, I live in Atlanta, so it's kind of a homer pick, but I really like what Georgia Tech is doing. I think they could be very fun, at least from a fantasy perspective, especially with Jeff Sims and Gibbs back there. And I like some of their receiving options as well. So, I think this is, I was talking about an off-season process, and I haven't necessarily like formalized this, but I do think it's worth thinking about who do I like right off the bat that's going to surprise people, and you can jump, those first couple weeks and have low ownership of some of these offenses that you like and everyone else might be kind of forgetting about until they show it. So I do think it's worth thinking through some of the stuff. So, all right, what program, from a DFS angle, from an offensive production angle, is going to disappoint? And you can go G5 or P5.
I will. This is gonna so I'm an OU grad, so this is gonna sound like homerism on my part as well, since you just went Georgia Tech. So I actually have concerns about Texas after watching the spring game. I know everybody's really excited about Sark being there. I get it. His track record's fantastic. The offensive line was terrible in that game. Both quarterbacks looked really rough. I know that Card's got the talent. I don't think he has the pocket presence yet, which is going to be a problem if that offensive line struggles. So I think if whichever quarterback gets the nod, and apparently Sark said today the one that's going to get the nod is just going to be the one that he just feels like at the time, or he's just going to shoot from the hip is what he was saying. It was kind of a weird way to put it.
Yeah.
You pay him $8 million just to throw a dart apparently. But whoever gets the nod, if they don't, get it together, then that's really going to affect some of those other weapons they got with Bijan and Whittington and Moore and Amare and all those guys. So that little bit of concern there.
Yeah, no, I think that's very warranted. I just all the news coming out of Texas in the spring that they, classic cliche, you have two QBs, you don't have any, and no one taking a step, no one establishing leadership under center. I'm a little worried about Texas as well. I mean, everyone assumed it would be Card, obviously, but like Thompson's there, and now they have this weird battle, and I think that's bad for a team. Honestly, I don't know why coaches do this. Like, just name a guy, because quarterback develops the identity of the team. Just pick a guy, and so the team can kind of rally. I think it's just never really great, I think, to do it this way. But
avoiding transfers, that's every coach is terrified of the battle.
That makes sense.
That's really it.
Yeah, well, and now that you can just leave with no strings attached, I mean, it is what it is. But like, Yeah, I don't know. You can't worry about the second string guy transferring. I mean, you got to do what's best for your starting, 7 or 11. But anyway, I think that's a pretty good call. And I think, again, thinking ahead, week 1, week 2, fading Texas because everyone's going to be all excited about Sark coming off the Bama year last year, could be beneficial. All right, breakout freshman. You can give me multiple positions. I know I said any position. If you have a couple, I'd love to hear them because that's always a fun thing to talk about.
Yeah. So flip side to Texas, I don't think I would have. If you'd asked me this question 2 months ago, this would not have been my answer. But Mario Williams at Oklahoma, you can't deny the fact that the coaches have just been talking him up all spring, and then they backed it up by he went out there and actually started the spring game. I know Theo Weiss is hurt, and Hazelwood still apparently is still trying to recover from last year's knee injury. A lot of people think that those are major roadblocks for him to get playing time early. I don't think so. I actually think I can see them running Mims, Williams, and even Mike Woods out there quite a bit together. And if you've got, the wide receiver 2 for Oklahoma early on, I mean, this guy's going to be a day 2 pick. I mean, he's been pretty dynamic early on. So, but yeah, those, I would say he's the one that tends to stand out the most for me. I don't know. Give me a couple guys that you're thinking. Maybe I'll think of a running back or quarterback here that kind of pops in mind.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Mario Williams to me is a great one. That is a good pick, and you're right. I think the initial thing was always going to Oklahoma. They have a million wide receivers, but when you break it down, they kind of not necessarily have a million, and some of them are injured, and some of them are gone from the team. Bridges, unfortunately. So, and he had some of my favorite film. The high school tape watching him out of Florida. They just have so many receivers that come out of Florida. Anybody does. But I like that a lot. I think he's very exciting. Total chalk here, but what Paul did at Bama in the spring game and just asserting himself right away, that's very exciting. You've got the young guys connection between Bryce Young and Hall just coming in and already connecting. I think that's super exciting. A super deep guy, and maybe is going to be relevant on DFS is Xavier Coleman. He's a guy I wrote about way back in like January because his tape was very, very impressive. His high school stuff, he just looks so dang fast. And I was like, he's going to Boston College. They don't have a lot of athletes. They have Zay Flowers, and that's about it. And he looks dynamic. And then their other running back, Bailey or whatever, transferred, and he stinks anyway. But I'm like, they don't have a running back. He's a little smaller, but then in spring, he apparently stole the show. And coaches are saying he is going to be a major part of this offense, right away. So that's very exciting because I think he brings flash, from the backfield that they just don't really have.
Yeah, I was actually just looking at a list of some running backs I had here, and Xavier Coleman was one that really stood out to me. I was going to say he really made a splash in the spring, so it's hard to deny him. As far as some quarterbacks, I've tweeted about this a number of times. I honestly don't think we may not see any true freshman quarterbacks start week 1 this year. There's just not a lot of openings. A lot of the elite guys went to some spots where they're either with a coach that isn't much of a risk taker, that tends to go on the conservative
Notre
side.
Dame.
Notre Dame it comes to mind. Michigan comes to mind. So there's a couple of them out there. So not a ton of quarterback play that I see early on where the true freshman is going to get some run. One that, since you gave a deep running back, I'll give maybe a little bit deeper one too that's not getting a whole lot of talk right now, is Demir Collins over to Oregon State. I know
very deep cut.
Yeah, so they obviously have a really good track record of what they're doing with running backs, and the fact that there's opening there now, and he is a 4-star guy. He was a low 4-star guy. He's on the smaller side. I want to say he's only like 5'8", 190. Don't quote me on that, but he's a little bit of a smaller guy, considered all-purpose back. But his film looks nice. And there's opportunity there. So that's one that I would kind of take a look at, that could be a play for DFS, those first few weeks that maybe other people aren't looking at.
Yeah, very nice. I pride myself in knowing all the names. I don't think he was one on my radar, so thank you for that, because that's very deep cut. And Oregon State might be a sneaky, like plucky little like quality team. I mean, I think people usually think of Oregon State as a total pushover, but I've heard some decent things about their season last year was actually everything in the Pac-12 was a disaster, but with COVID. But I think they are building a little something in Oregon State, maybe. All right, so a sophomore riser that kind of didn't necessarily explode as a freshman, but you still think could make a big run. I kind of gave an example in the show sheet here, like a Treylon Burks, who was quiet but sneaky good in freshman year, and then obviously went nuts last year. Now everybody knows his name.
Yeah, I'm going to totally regret doing this because I have a best ball draft coming up starting next week, and I know the guys in this league are definitely going to try to snipe. But this one's easy for me. It's Dwayne McBride over at UAB. I am a huge fan, and I'm actually, like I said, I'm tired of pumping sunshine for this guy because he's gone from his ADP when we first started doing mocks a couple months ago. He was going around 10, 11, and now I've seen him go as early as round 6. So, that's a workhorse job. Spencer Brown had that one for a number of years. Dwayne McBride's better. He's more talented. He's a much better athlete. So I think he will put up, big numbers with 250 plus carries potentially there at UAB.
Oh, wow. That's a great one. So again, first couple weeks, if UAB's on the slate, everybody, just Dwayne McBride, don't even think about it. He's probably going to be priced almost near the minimum as a true freshman. So I guess he's a sophomore riser. So still, but a guy who didn't get anything last year because Spencer Brown was the workhorse. So yeah, I love that, looking at teams that routinely do give just workhorse role. I mean, that's what you want. So, my guy is I'm still want Jalen Hyatt to be a thing. I love that guy. I think he's so good. And with Heupel's offense, maybe we will see it. But there's a number of guys at Tennessee that could kind of pop. I'm still betting on Hyatt myself. Heisman favorite. Love to talk about this. Give me your favorite, and then a super sneaky dark horse.
I'll go with Bryce Young. I think it really comes down to 3 guys: Young, Rattler, and DJU. I think that you're going to have to be in contention. I'm not sure that JT Daniels will be able to put up the numbers. So I like Bryce Young in this scenario. As far as my dark horse, I already mentioned him as an offense that I think is really, really trending in a good direction, and that's DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Yeah, I think that I would like to say somebody like Desmond Ridder. I don't know that G5 is going to get the votes, but I think that DTR could maybe swing a lot of those West Coast votes, and maybe they make the New Year's Six Bowl or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes crazy and puts that team onto their back, and they're knocking on the playoff, if they go 11-1 or something like that, who knows? I agree. I actually got into a little bit of a discussion on Twitter earlier this week, I believe, because I mentioned Ridder as a super dark horse Heisman vote, to bet on him. And, people were like, no, G5, no way, no way. And I was like, well, yeah, that's why you're going to get ridiculously good odds. But
Right.
There's a pathway that I can see, and that's if they go undefeated and become like the first G5 team to crash the playoff. If that happens, the narrative is, and he goes off, has 50 touchdowns or who knows what. Like, that's the narrative. That's what would have to happen. Now, obviously, you're getting crazy odds because maybe it's never happened before. But to me, heading into the season, this is a G5 team with a QB that there is a conceivable pathway, I think, because they probably have a decent playoff chance, as good as any other G5 team in recent memory.
Wouldn't it be the worst if you're holding that Ritter ticket and they do exactly what you say, and Ohio State also goes undefeated and he end up splits votes with Stroud or something like that, and that's the only thing keeping you from cashing that ticket? That would be the worst.
So bad. I mean, yeah, you'd have to really have diamond hands there to not try to sell it or flip it to somebody else or something. I don't know, but there's a conceit. I may even do it. I don't know what the odds are. They're probably very, very high, very huge odds. I'm sure because G5 guys don't win the Heisman. But
yeah.
All right. Did you say dark horse for you?
Yeah,
you
did.
DTR.
DTR was my dark horse. Who did you like as far as your favorites?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Ritter's my dark horse if I would want to say that. I mean, you got to pick a quarterback. Although I know Devonta just won, but I think Rattler, that's so chalky, but like he's the odds-on favorite, and I think Oklahoma is going to kind of go nuts on offense this year. I think last year, people kind of dog on Rattler a little bit because he didn't go hyper scoring last year, but it's the first time that offense has not had like a fourth year quarterback transfer in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years since they've been so good. There's a true sophomore or a redshirt freshman, whatever, second year guy. I think there's a decent chance that, Riley reined it in a little bit and they didn't need him to go crazy. Their defense picked it up in the second half. They didn't have to score 100,000 points a game. I just think he's super good, and I think they're going to let him a little more loose this year. And now Eric Gray, super dynamic out of the backfield. But all this. I'm just telling it for my listeners. I mean, obviously, that depth chart like the back of your hand. But yeah, I just think chalky Rattler. That's not anything too controversial.
Yep.
All right. So let's see. A team looking ahead where you think there'll be that beautiful perfect storm for DFS, a team with a good offense and a trash defense, and every single time you can just lock them in for the over under the week.
So
you have to go P5 here because every G5 team pretty much is
no
that.
Doubt.
Every MAC game.
Absolutely, yeah. So the blueprint to this in my mind is Ole Miss, what they did last year.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if I can spot a team that I think has a lot of very similar characteristics to what Ole Miss was last year at this time, and you touched on them earlier, this sounds stupid just saying it out loud, but I actually think it's Tennessee. Tennessee is going to be a wretched, ugly mess of a defense with all of the defections that they have.
Yeah, guys leaving. Yep.
They've got a new coach in that's going to actually breathe some life into that offense that hasn't had any life in a number of years under Pruitt. So, and Heupel's shown that he can be pretty effective in year one as he's bounced around and started over a number of programs as the OC or the head coach. They've got some QB options. They looked really good in the spring game, like I said, because their defense looked atrocious. So, I think it's one of those ones where they'll find themselves down early, and Heupel won't quit. He's just going to chuck it all over the field. So I think that they could be one of those.
I love that call. That is fantastic, and everyone's going to hold their nose or just not even pick Tennessee players probably, but that could be, a market advantage. I think that's great. You're absolutely right. Couldn't agree with you more. They're going to be trash on defense.
So bad.
And I don't know when the game is, but like a Tennessee-Kentucky stack, whenever that game comes along, could be very nice. And probably I'll just, even right now, I can tell you that game will be low ownership because Tennessee-Kentucky, you look at that and you go, oh, gross. But that could be like a 50-50 game. No problem, I think. Because Kentucky, I kind of like that offense a little bit. As at least as a sneaky, under thought offense. Right. Well, that's great. I love the Tennessee call. Thank you so much for coming on. For everyone listening, he's CFF Nate, right?
Yep, at CFF Nate.
At CFF Nate on Twitter. Unfortunately, he does not have anything else, website or anything that you can get, but you follow him on Twitter and he'll chop it up with you. Obviously knows a ton about the game that we really all like here. I'd love to have you back on, when we're grinding in the season and talk about some of the slates.
That'd be awesome, man. Anytime.
All right, dude. Well, take it easy. And thanks everyone for tuning in to Why Wait Till Sunday.